Hey guys, Karibo Bros here, and I'm back with another speed duel deck profile. This time it is Inner Conflict Relinquished. Inner Conflict, I believe, is still the best skill card in the game, despite the fact that the Battle City box gave us over 20 new skills. I believe Inner Conflict is still the best. Like, this card was responsible for power creep and Moth Turbo, and that just shows how good this skill is. It's basically rain control, but we can attack with the monster, but it just can't attack our opponent directly. So I'll read the skill, we'll go through the deck. We are playing a 27 card list. Now, 27 card list is not bad. Most of the time, you want to play a minimum number of cards just to see your engine pieces and thin out your deck. Deck thinning is deck winning is usually what people say. However, this deck has a few engines in it, it floats, and it has recursion. So that's why the deck's so big. I guess you'd compare it to maybe like Dragon Link and normal Yu-Gi-Oh, where they probably play 60. Well, a lot of the players play 60 cards at the moment, which people argue is to the detriment of that deck. But it has so many engine pieces and so many different things going on that you need to play as many cards as possible. We're playing 27 cards, as I say. You may want to cut the deck down. I mean, you could make a case for shaving 2 cards out of this, I think, but I personally like it at 27. Going to the deck profile, as I say. So, in a conflict. Activate the skill during your main phase. Once per duel, you can pay half your life points, take control of one of your opponent's monsters until the end of the phase, until the end of the turn, but it cannot attack directly this turn. Just a very powerful card. That's our skill card. Playing 2 copies of Relinquished. Obviously, this is my favourite card in Speed Duel. I love just being able to take our opponent's monsters for free. Relinquished gains it as gains their attack, gains it as an equip spell. If Relinquished will be destroyed, the equipped monster is destroyed instead, and while Relinquished is equipped with a monster, both players take the battle damage that Relinquished takes. 3 copies of Sphere Karibo, still the best hand trap in the game, because we're very limited on our hand traps. Yeah, very good battle trap, and can be used as a ritual summon tribute fodder for Relinquished in the graveyard. 3 copies of one of my favourite Go cards, Breaker the Magical Warrior. I did pull a nice secret rare in one of my Battle City boxes. So this card essentially just baits our opponent's Book of Moon, or alternatively can be used as a 1900 beta onto the mini Magician engine. 2 copies of Apprentice Magician. When this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, we can special summon 1 level 2 or lower spellcaster type monster from our deck. So we can summon a second copy of itself, or we can summon a copy of Crystal Seer. Crystal Seer, when it is flipped, we excavate the top 2 cards of our deck, add one of them to a hand, and send the other to the graveyard. So this is really cool. If we excavate 2, we might see a Relinquished or a pre-prep. We'll send the Relinquished back at the pre-prep, and then we'll go +1. I've seen some people playing 3 and 1, which is the ratio originally people were playing with this engine, but I like 2 and 2 because at the moment in the current meta, more often than not, our opponent is ending on 1 monster in the first turn rather than 2. So we can arguably recycle this engine twice in 1 game. Lastly, for the monster count, taking it to 14, we play 2 copies of Jinzo. Obviously, this works in tandem with Inner Conflict. We'll activate Inner Conflict, take control of our opponent's monster, tribute summon it for Jinzo. Again, it's another good Book of Moon target that our opponent will have to use on Jinzo. And if they do use Book of Moon on Jinzo, that means we're free to bring out Relinquished and take our opponent's monster with Relinquished. That's the 14 monster count, as I say. Moving on to the spells. 3 copies of Do You Have Ash Blossom? Pre-prep of Rites. Pre-preparation of Rites. Add 1 monster from your... Add one ritual spell from your deck to your hand, and add 1 ritual monster from your deck or graveyard to your hand whose name is listed on that ritual spell. You can only activate one pre-preparation of Rites per turn. Now this is really cool because if we draw into the second copy of Black Illusion Ritual before we see this, we can activate this, add the Relinquished from graveyard and the copy of Black Illusion Ritual from deck, as long as we still have 1 copy in the deck, if that makes sense. 2 copies of Black Illusion Ritual to summon out Relinquished. 2 copies of one of my favourite cards from the Battle City box, Fiend Sanctuary. Very few ways to special summon monsters for free in Speed Duel, and this is one of them. So it summons a level 1 token with attack and defense of 0. It can't attack, but our opponent does take the battle damage that this card takes. So that's sort of semi-relevant. But what's more important is in this deck is we can just tribute summon it for Jinzo, or we can use it as tribute fodder for Black Illusion Ritual. 2 copies of our own Book of Moon because it's the best staple in the format at the moment. 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, that gives us 5 ways to out our opponent's Book of Moon, 2 of this and 3 Break of the Magical Warrior. And lastly, a tech choice of mine, 2 Soul Exchange. So this card works very well. It suits the deck. It suits in a conflict. We can take control of. We can arguably with these 2, we can take control of 2 of our opponent's monsters to a degree. So we can get 2 of their monsters off board in the same turn. We can use it in a conflict to take control of an opponent's monster. We can use Soul Exchange to either tribute summon a Jinzo with one of our opponent's monsters, or the better yet, we can use Soul Exchange to ritual summon Relinquished by using one of our opponent's monsters, as ritual summons are counted as tributing monsters for the summon. So that just works in tandem. It's a very niche play, but it's something I really like. So that is the 27 card main deck. We move on to the side deck. Third copy of Jinzo. If your opponent maybe isn't playing as many copies of Book of Moon, is playing a very heavy trap heavy lineup of deck, we can play this instead. 1 copy of Noble Mana Crossout. This is just good for when our opponents do play cards like Apprentice Magician or other set monsters that can recur them cards, such as the Koichi. I'd like to be able to play 2, but given we only have a 6-card side deck, I think 1 is justifiable for now. 2 copies of Lost Wind. Now, this is because XYZ is a very popular deck. People like to play it. I myself like to play XYZ, but at least within my own playing circle, XYZ I know is quite popular. So 2 Lost Wing, because we can use it to negate the XYZ fusion effects and recur this card from the graveyard when our opponent special summons from the extra deck. Lastly, 2 copies of Magic Drain. Now, going first, we could set an Apprentice Illusion Magician. We could set this in our turn. We don't have to fear Book of Moon, especially if we can bring out Jinzo, because if our opponent activates Book of Moon, we can chain this. Now they've got to either discard a second spell from hand to negate this, which puts them down a resource, or we will just negate the Book of Moon, which is ideally what we want to do. Yet to see how good this is, but it was just something I was thinking about and something I'm looking forward to trying once I get back to the locals at the weekend. Onto the extra Flextra deck. We don't use the extra deck, but it's just there, isn't it? Make your opponent guess what you're playing before the beginning of the game. I was debating whether to side in the skill version for Pegasus, the one that lets you fusion summon Thousand Eyes Restrict out, but that would require playing at least 1 copy of Thousand Eyes Idol, which I don't feel comfortable with doing. That's the deck profile, guys. Thanks for watching. Please let me know what you think of the deck, what decks you're currently playing, what's your local meta like, and any suggestions you think that should be made to this deck, please let me know below.